Welcome to Leaders and Laggards.
I'd like to welcome everybody to the fourth episode of Leaders and Laggards. And our topic for tonight is going to be, what is the difference between leadership and management? Zoomcast team tonight is Dave Swenson, Jeff Custer, and Riyad Artajay. So welcome everybody, and we're gonna have a great discussion regarding leadership tonight. So the first question is, at a high level, what would you say are the key differences between leading and managing? And Dave, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I'll take a crack at it. So, this is a question that comes up an awful lot when I'm working with groups that are, I tend to work with groups more than I do individuals, but when inevitably almost day one, hour one, you start to have the conversation about I've already got a management position. What's really different about leading? And so my answer is always pretty straightforward. I say that, when we're managing, you could almost define that as, as a manager, I'm trying to get the best, most efficient results I possibly can, but I'm utilizing known inputs and outputs, right? So everything is known, and I'm really just managing for the most efficient output possible. So essentially, to me, a manager is trying to get the best results they possibly can through utilizing their resources, whether those resources are people, machines, tools, what have you. They're working within the status quo, and they're very good at doing that. Now, I think where it's different as a leader, though, is leading is all about action, and specifically taking the action to develop yourself so that you can better add value to or serve others, right? So a leader is very concerned about understanding the people on their team and helping them to dream more, learn more, do more, become more, right? And so essentially your job as a leader is to provide value to others by giving them momentum to grow, and then a means in which they could do so, right? That's how I say the differences between the two.
Great. Thanks, Dave. What are your thoughts, Ray?
Definitely agree and concur with Dave on his comment. To me, honestly, the leader looks at the forest and the manager looks at the trees or leaves, very detailed. I look at the macro, micro. Another example to me is, for example, visually looking at leadership is the person, which I started learning about that some time ago, but putting people, when I talk to people, I like to put them in the round table. Everybody equal, and all knights are equal. Where a manager sits on his desk and he brings people, I see him, to the office, and he's in a directive mode. Show me the task. What have you done for us lately? What results, and so forth. Very direct, very task-oriented, instead of the leader saying, how you doing? How's everything? The manager always gets kind of, he or she, her own way. I want it done this way. Where the leader sets the goal, the vision, and then I'm hiring very good people, the talented people, so they do the job. I don't have to tell them how to do it.
Great. What are your thoughts, Jeff?
Yeah, I'd like to build off of what Ray talked about as the forest and the trees, and a different analogy for me. I really like history, and this question makes me think about the Lewis and Clark expedition. And if you remember your history books from school, Lewis and Clark led an expedition really that started in St. Louis, Missouri, and they were trying to find a water route to the Pacific Ocean. And I just have this thought of Lewis and Clark standing on top of a ridge, looking out over the landscape ahead of them. and they have a vision about where they need to go and where they want to go. And they're there inspiring the expedition, all the people on the expedition. They're inspiring them. They're looking forward to the future. And then they're really, I think, shaping the culture around that group. And if you know the details of that expedition, there was also a guy named Sergeant Floyd who started on that expedition with them. He was actually the only person that died on that expedition. But I kind of think of Sergeant Floyd as a manager. He was the guy that followed the vision. He didn't set the vision, and he was more about the execution. So when you had your boats and you ran into some rapids on the river, you need to portage the boat around. Sergeant Floyd was the manager in charge of getting the people to take the boat around the obstacle. And so I think that managers more probably like you guys had said, work in the present versus having the vision. I think that to me is always, Ken, the thing that comes to mind when I think about this is I think Lewis and Clark are the leaders, and a guy like Sergeant Floyd is the manager.
Yeah, so thanks for the great visualization aspect, Jeff. I mean, I think that really, when you have an ability to tell a story and have a visualization, it really helps. And so it's when I was just kind of thinking about this topic, I kept it kind of simplistic, just because I knew that the three of you would have some great input into it. And so for me, leaders influence and managers direct. I mean, that's very simplistic and it's not that simple, but that's one of the ways I've looked at it. So
if I may add another comment, leaders focus on people first. First and foremost, people. That's what makes things happen, tick, click, whatever you call it. Managers focus on tasks, on results, on actions. And that's really at the nugget of it. Thank you.
So now I'd like us to get a little bit more specific. And I would like us to have a little bit of a discussion about what are some examples of leader skills versus manager skills. And so, Jeff, I'm going to go to you, and I'd like you to lead us off on this one.
Yeah, and I think the thing I would add, I think Ray kind of went down this path. I think it's really a matter of strategy versus tactics. I think the leader really, I think it's kind of interesting because I think we could be talking about one and the same person. Because I think you have people in middle management in corporations or other organizations that have both those hats. They have expectations to be leaders, to where they're setting strategy and vision. And they also wear this other hat where they're a manager. And I think that's a difficult place for a person to be, to have a foot in both those worlds. So I evaded your question completely and forgot it. So can you repeat it?
Sure. I'd like to get a little bit more specific, and I would like to have you give us some examples of leaders' skills versus manager skills. So just kind of like to play off is like, if a manager is this, how is a leader different? Or
I think, so I thanks for restating the question. I mean, one of the things that comes to mind is kind of time frame. I think the leader's going to tend to be thinking about next year and 5 years from now, where managers are going to be thinking about after lunch today and tomorrow and what I have to do next week. So I think the time horizon is different between leaders and managers, that leaders have that longer view, and managers are dealing with the churn of the day-to-day. And I think, one of the things I think is a challenge for those people that are listening that are in that boat I described, where they're wearing both hats, leader and manager. The challenge is the churn of today sucks away all your time, and you have a hard time putting your leader hat on. So I think that to me is probably one of the key differences and challenges for those people.
Yeah, I want you to hold that thought, because the next question is going to relay right towards that. But Dave, what are some of your thoughts about some of the differences between the skill sets or the attributes of a leader versus a manager?
I think if I was going to give an example, right, I struggled with this one a little bit as Jeff was talking, but the thing that comes to my mind fairly quickly is some kind of self-improvement. Maybe I'll pick on weight loss, right? You could put a diet, workout regimen, and a lifestyle plan together, and a manager might ask for your results periodically, and if you slipped off a plan or those kinds of things, they might not even care. They just focused on, did you achieve the results that we agreed upon in the past month, week, so on and so forth, and if not, what's the matter with you? Where a leader might take more of that coach's hat and say, up front, foremost, why are we taking this path in the first place, right? So what's your why for beginning this journey? But then periodically, coming alongside you and asking the questions to add value to your journey, not necessarily picking you out and saying, hey, there's something wrong with you or you're failing, but more of a, how can I help you? How can I serve you? That for me is really where the difference is. And it takes intentionality to do that, right? It's easy to say, well, you failed, there's something wrong with you. It's an entirely different mindset to say, how can I serve you, right? And that, for me, that's really where the rubber starts to meet the road.
What are your thoughts, Ray?
Attributes, leaders versus managers. I think leaders, they encourage diversity. So they like to have a different team, cross-functional team members, so they get a different opinion and better decision-making instead of narrow-minded of certain group or bias one function. So they bring more diversity. The other thing is they really work on the culture side. They really focus on the culture, where the leader focus on the manager focus on the strategy, the results, the short term or whatever, but the leader looks for the long term. For example, he or she, the leader, will develop the people skills. He or she understands that some people don't have the skill set. So they work with that person in that role, develop the skill set to get it. It may take a little bit longer, but they got a person trained and effective and working correctly. Where another manager say, I'll go get it done, hire a contractor, get it done, and we'll solve it right away and get the results right away. So there's difference on the big picture. And then I'm thinking the managers, in many ways, they very, dealing day to day, week to week with the minutia, and not spending enough time developing the people or getting to know the people or their problems. They not good as listener and leaders. We need 2 ears. Sometimes I see it 1 or 1.5, where they're not getting the true facts and issues. I think they need to connect with the people well. And I used to say to some of my managers, I have to be careful how to say this. I said, you have to know your people. And if it demands that you sleep with them, kind of get in their dreams and understand their situation. So next day, you're not surprised what's going on. Somebody resigned. I'll be shocked when a manager says, I have so-and-so to the director or to the general manager saying, John Doe just resigned. You had no idea this is coming. You've seen him on LinkedIn a lot, or resumes, you've seen him disengage and, all that stuff. I think we should have a pulse all the time and managers needs to spend more time on their people, the skill set, what they need, how to get it done, and get to know them, not just on the work side, that we have to spend time on the personal side a little bit to get to know, break bread and what have you. It's very important to break that bond. And I'll tell you, my president here in Millbury, Randy Burkholder, first week I showed up, he invited me for steak barbecue at his house. That doesn't happen often. He has a different paradigm than others. You don't come to the boss's house. Some people, you've never seen that, where he invited me and I was cooking, grilling with him, and we just met a week ago. That was impressive. Japanese folks, with all respect, very direct, very managerial. I had weekly task list, weekly meetings. Where are you at? Where are you going? More on managing by objectives and MBO and stuff. Leaders tend to kind of trust the person. No need to cross these I's. Just tell me how things going.
And so one of the things that I would encourage, any of our listeners to look into, to actually Google the difference between a manager and a leader. And, some of the things that I came across is a manager gives direction, whereas a leader asks questions. A manager is considered as having subordinates, whereas a leader has followers. A manager holds authority. A leader is more motivational in nature. A manager tells you what, a leader shows you how. And again, you can just keep going down those types of questions, but I know that in the presentations that I have for doing project management training and leadership training, it's often the differentiation. And but one of the things is that it's, as I think it was Jeff that actually said that we often wear both hats, and how do you switch back and forth, which really leads into the next question. So as we were saying, that the transition now is between a manager and a leader. So can you describe from your experience when you should manage and when you should lead? And Ray, we're going to start with you on this one.
Yeah, definitely. There is a risk in everything we do. And then when you step in as a manager is definitely when things are, not going as planned. And there is no perfect plan, right? So there is no straight line. I've never seen it. You can put the best plans, but there's always internal, external issues that help, whether turnover, people, environment issues, factors and such. But I see managers stepping in is when things are not going well and they need the results right away, and they step in and take charge, which, in a sense, they are already in charge. The leader, I think, more or less, he's bringing a team, and he's really communicating the why it's important and why we need to get this done so fast and so forth. So I feel the leader is more reaching out, more understanding, and listening. Very important for the leader to listen from his people. If things, when he can really change hats, and this is the hat, funny hat, you change it and you become a leader, and then a manager, leader like a cheerleader, and celebrate the wins. That's another thing. Unfortunately, the manager only showed up when things don't go well. The firefighting. They always have the firefighter hat. Let's get it done at any cost. And we'll fix it next time. There is no fixing next time. But the leader shares the lessons of failure with everyone, and then develop a process, a step to fix it, and train everybody on the new method and make sure it's sustainable. So again, we're going back to the big picture, the long run, the forest view versus a narrow short term leaves and maybe a tree for the manager. And it's a very challenging act between playing the two. And I've seen it where an environment's turnover is a big thing, and especially today with the big quit, we're talking. So you need to understand and do well with your teams, because turnover will eat you up pretty bad if you don't do the certain leadership traits and skills that needed to kind of keep momentum and motivate and encourage these people, and treat the mistakes, the oops, as a learning development tool for the next one, not as punishment and you're no good, and we're gonna find somebody else. This is not a leadership situation.
Great, thanks, Ray. What are your thoughts, Dave?
So kind of two thoughts here. I guess the first thing is, in 2022, we're going on our second year of, I guess, what you can consider to be an international crisis. And I don't see a quick end in sight. So with that in mind, I'm not certain that there's a place at this point in time for someone who wants to be the boss, someone who wants to rely on their title and maybe lead if they need to, right? I think those days are behind us, at least for now. We're not in boom years. People deserve more than that. So I would say that if someone an individual can't, without hesitation, tell me what it is that they're doing to improve themselves, and at the same time, what it is they're doing to develop the leaders around them, I'm not sure that person should be around authority in 2022. And I'm just going to be blunt about that.
It certainly has been a change dynamic. And, one of the things I know when I was thinking about this is you want managers, you need to manage when you're more in a crisis mode, but when your crisis mode extends over a 2-year period, to your point, Dave, you need to be more of a leader, because you can't manage through over 2 years. You need to inspire, motivate, and lead.
Yep.
So, point well taken. What are your thoughts, Jeff?
Well, just to add, I mean, already some probably really, really good points. I mean, just to add, we took last week we did a little bit of a book review. It kind of felt like, so to bring a little book review back to our day to day. And there's a book I read called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. And one of the things, I already used this term, but the author really talks about the whirlwind. And I think managers mostly live in the whirlwind. It's the problems of today. It's, I have an employee issue, I have a union issue, I have a customer issue that needs to get fixed today. And I think both Ray and Dave talked to those things, in that managers are going to fix the problems of today. Versus a leader, I think, is going to have, again, that different view to say, okay, we keep having that same customer issue. What strategy can we put in place so that down the road we don't have that problem anymore? So I think that's one of the things I see different. And talk about firefighting, Ken, I know you got a little bit of background in the utility industry like me, and I've worked on the distribution side of the utility business. So in the upper Midwest, we have a lot of storms. And I think it's a real good example of management stepping in. When we have a big storm that would go through and we have a lot of outages, management kicks into high gear. And when you're responding to those outages, there's not time for strategy. We got to go take care of customers and fix things. And where strategy comes into place is, over time, we put processes in place so that we get really good at the fire drills. So when we have to have a fire drill, we're really good at it. And so I think that's, to me, one of the key distinctions is managers tend to spend their life in the whirlwind.
Yeah, and I had the opportunity yesterday to facilitate a workshop on Leaders Eat Last, the book by Simon Sinek. And and one of the things that he really looks at when in the book is the difference between quarterly focus, where you're really all about the numbers, and maybe more of a long-term vision for strategy and things like that. And that to me really goes back into management versus leadership, and the examples you just used. When you're in a short term or a crisis or a storm or something like that, yeah, you absolutely need to manage and direct and get it done. But if you're really looking for sustainability over the long period, and you want to be able to, as a leader, or even as you get further up in the organization, and as the CEO or an executive, and you want to be able to walk away, you want to make sure that the organization is going to survive and thrive in your absence. And that's where leadership really comes in. And that's the way I kind of look at it. So I think we've reached our time for tonight. So I'm just going to, I'll just go around real quick. Start with you, Jeff, since you went last. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, my hat's off to those folks who wear both hats. I've had many direct reports that wear both those hats. It's an incredibly difficult position to be in, where there's a lot of expectations for you to be both a leader and a manager. And it's really fun to work with people to have them excel in those situations, but also to push them to say, to grow, I need you to have more time spent in the leadership side. And to watch people do that's just really rewarding.
Okay. Dave, closing thoughts.
Well, it's tough to top what Jeff just said, but I guess for me, closing thoughts are this. We've talked a lot tonight about management versus leading, and I've heard a number of people tell me over the years that leadership is a set of soft skills, and I argue that. I say that these are actually skills that are very difficult to pick up, because there's not a lot of good examples out there. There's not a lot of, traditionally, there hasn't been a lot of schools where you can go actually learn leadership. It's something they have to intentionally learn. But I would say that my leadership development journey has been some of the most rewarding work that I've ever done in my life. I believe it's made me a better husband. It's made me a better father. It's made me a better person. And I think the juice is worth the squeeze for anybody that's really interested in getting involved.
Well said. Ray?
Yeah, to me, leadership and management, really, there is a big difference. To me, it's about, one of them is focused on the culture. One is about strategy, actions, results. One is really focusing on how, what can I get out of my people, the best output, okay? And other thing, not just results. So he or she will focus as a leader, the way we do it here, very 360 degree, but inclusive of everybody opinion, every opinion matters. And the other side is here's how we do it, and we do it this way. So I'm hoping people will step out, and there is no one management style or leadership style fits all. Every company's got its own DNA. It works different. And people, when they come into the organization, they need to kind of fit and work on the culture, understand what works, what doesn't, and so forth. So it's very important to allow that, I guess, the time to blend and mix and take shape and so forth. And if they don't, unfortunately, people leave the organization. Leaders, managers need to transform themselves, their skill set. They need to really get out of their box, comfort zone, and step out to learn new skills, to really embrace diversity, inclusion, and other things to really get the best out of their people.
Great. Thank you, Dave, Ray, and Jeff. And what I just want to encourage any of our listeners is, as a leader, demonstrate that you care about your people and that you want to help them be better. And as a leader, be the leader that you would want to follow. So that's a wrap on Leaders and Laggards, episode 4. And thank you for listening.
Thanks for watching, and remember, leadership matters.